Opportunity to be the people in charge of this building beside us. I had a nightmare that our state governments have been inviting so many of us and so many teachers to the building, saying that they want to hear our voices. They want to hear our concerns. They want to hear what we care about. They want to hear how we can give them information to make change. And oftentimes at these meetings, they serve us chicken and ice cream and tea. I submit to you that they never do anything with our voices and the things that we tell them to do to change. And I would say to you that any state government that invites teachers to a space and serving us chicken and ice cream and tea and doesn't really want to listen and to actually take into account what we have to say, they're as dead as the chicken, they're as cold as the ice cream, and as weak as the tea. I had a nightmare that people from varying ethnicities, most recently a young Latina woman came to me in tears because her brother, who's a B+, C+, B- student, may not be able to graduate from high school with his diploma because he did not pass their state's high-stakes high school graduation tests. It's one of many who come to me. That's part of the nightmare that I had today. I had a nightmare that I once worked at a school district where teachers fasted and prayed during test time because of the pressures. I had a nightmare that high-stakes testing left little time to address bullying, left little time to provide safe and productive learning zones for our LGBT students and families, left little time for authentic learning and facilitation, but plenty of time for high-stakes documentation. I said I had a nightmare this morning. I had a nightmare that the competition model for learning so outweighed the cooperative model for learning that our fellow educators felt compelled to cheat so that their families would have enough money to eat. I had a nightmare that so long after Dr. King wrote of the three major evils of segregation, that schools were continuously resegregating. I had a nightmare that school funding was still based heavily on property taxes, guaranteeing inequities by zip code, county, and state. I had a nightmare that the wealthy 1% are happily hoarding profits while denying too many families in our school communities the right to employment and a living wage, leaving too many teachers and paraprofessionals unable to afford to live in the towns where they teach. I had a nightmare this morning. I had a nightmare that propaganda from 1983, when I was in 3rd grade, that they call A Nation at Risk, that misled us all into telling us that the traditional public schools are a monopoly. And in that monopoly, we need to break up that monopoly because there is a rising tide of mediocrity in today's traditional public schools. Right? Any of you guys remember that? Anyone remember A Nation at Risk?
Yes.
Yes. There's a rising tide of mediocrity. There's the traditional public schools are causing us unilateral disarmament. Right? All of this high-flown language that we now know as propaganda today. I had a nightmare that document continues to mislead us and continues to drive much of the public policy that comes out of this building. I had a nightmare this morning. I had a nightmare that high-stakes testing accountability, coupled with unaffordable housing, the lack of a living wage, and underemployment plagued too many of our school communities. The high-stakes testing accountability standards exacerbated the inequities of disproportionality, leaving too many of our young brothers and sisters being inequitably and disproportionately placed in special education, which isn't special at all. Leaving too many of them being inequitably and disproportionately not placed into enrichment programs that we call gifted education. But we like to have a whole lot of them in this nightmare I had, being expelled and suspended and making sure that they drop out, leading and contributing to what we call the school to prison pipeline.